In one of his speeches, Dr. King talked about the challenge of facing change. He said this: "One of the great liabilities of history is that all too many people fail to remain awake through great periods of social change. Every society has its protectors of status quo and fraternities of the indifferent, who are notorious for sleeping through revolutions. Today, our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change."
Formal black churches began to emerge in the late 18th century in cities like Philadelphia, Petersburg, Virginia, and Savannah, Georgia. Like many slaves and free black people, those early congregations were inspired by the preaching of white Baptist and Methodist ministers who traveled throughout the South in what became known as the Great Awakening of the late 18th century. The scriptures these ministers taught had particular appeal to slaves, many of whom converted to these two denominations. Free blacks in both northern and southern cities began to form independent black congregations and churches where they could practice religion free from white oversight and onerous supervision. Meanwhile, slaves began to hold hidden religious meetings and organize underground churches where they mixed Christian beliefs with their African heritage. They expressed their religious beliefs with African rhythms, gospel songs, and spirituals. These early underground churches provided psychological refuge from the oppressive white world in which slaves were forced to toil. Gradually, the slaves found opportunities to take up active roles in new congregations, especially in the burgeoning Baptist church, where African Americans were appointed as leaders and preachers. As they listened to Bible readings, slaves developed their own interpretations of the scriptures and found particular inspiration in stories of deliverance, such as the Exodus from Egypt. After slavery was abolished, African Americans continued to establish separate congregations and church facilities, creating communities within which they could worship in their own chosen ways. This growth in black churches was accelerated by segregationists who prevented African Americans from worshiping in the same churches as whites. Black churches became centers for communities, served as schools, and took on social welfare functions. As they developed, these churches fostered strong community organizations, and their congregations became seedbeds for spiritual and political leaders of the civil rights movement.
Well, the black church was the only institution that we totally controlled and that had little or no white influence in it. And so people would say what they really felt. They felt secure. They felt empowered. And they believed that the cause of race relations was just because they read about it in the Bible.
A new generation of civil rights activists forged their faith in the growing environment of freedom and religious beliefs fostered by black churches. This group included the young pastor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His faith and personal beliefs determined the nature of his activism, thus helping to shape the civil rights movement. Dr. King's relationship with white churches was not harmonious. In one of his most anthologized messages, the 1963 letter from the Birmingham jail, he took issue with white clergymen in Alabama who demanded an end to his acts of civil disobedience. The jailed leader expressed his disappointment in the leadership of the white church. He criticized what he called the contemporary church as being a protector of the status quo. He stated that he would continue to fight unjust laws because they were in conflict with higher laws of morality, as well as the Christian principle of the equality of all people before God.
The letter Dr. King wrote from his cramped Birmingham jail cell was a response to a statement issued by church leaders. In that letter, he wrote this: "In your statement, you assert that our actions, even though peaceful, must be condemned because they precipitate violence. But is this a logical assertion? Isn't this like condemning a robbed man because his possession of money precipitated the evil act of robbery? We must come to see that, as the federal courts have consistently affirmed, it is wrong to urge an individual to cease his efforts to gain his basic constitutional rights because the quest may precipitate violence. Society must protect the robbed and punish the robber.
Just a few months later, a group of violent segregationists delivered horrible confirmation that they feared black churches for their role in the civil rights movement. The 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham was bombed, and 4 young girls were killed. It was no coincidence that the bomb was placed in a church. It had become clear to everyone that the heart and soul of the civil rights movement lay in black churches throughout the country.